Hey, all you rad dads out there.
Well, Jonathan, thanks so much for joining me on the Rad Dad Show. I'm going to start the way we always do by asking, who are you?
I'm Jonathan Sparks. I do a bunch of different things. I'm a business lawyer and entertainment lawyer. I also, of course, make a bunch of music, and I'm releasing it under my name, about a song a month. And I also have my own podcast called Success Decisions and Rock and Roll. So hopefully I can. And I'm also a dad.
Right. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
So how many kids do you have?
So my fiance and I both have a child from a prior marriages, I should say, and we actually met at a children's birthday party. So they're the same age. Which
Oh,
is
wow.
Really, yeah.
That's
so
cool.
They're kind of like twins, and they're 5 and 6, and they're in the same kindergarten grade right now.
And you have a boy and a girl, right?
Yeah, boy, girl. Yeah, and the boy has her son has my same birthday, which is pretty neat.
Oh, crazy.
And my daughter is she's quite the performer.
Yeah.
she puts me to shame. Yeah.
Nice. So dad and stepdad sort of situation, right?
Yeah.
That's really neat. The kids are a similar age. I have a 6-year-old daughter as well. So we're going to have probably a lot of similar things to talk about, similar things going on in their lives right now.
Is yours a performer too, or did she?
She is. Yeah. Like, I mean, she loves music. Both the kids really love music and really love, that kind of performance aspect of things for sure. Lots of dancing and singing around the house. We were talking before we kind of got rolling about our Rad Dads event last weekend. And so I went up and sang Blitzkrieg Bop by the Ramones. And I had been like practicing with my kids to do the Hey Ho, Let's Go. So they helped me out with that. They loved it.
Oh, that's great. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Perfect. Yeah.
So
Dad skills 100.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It felt really good. It was kind of neat to share that together. So do you consider yourself a rad dad?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a cool parenting style that we've kind of adhered to that helps them to, be more independent and kind of, live their own vision and lives. And I think it's a pretty neat way of parenting and running the household.
So is that sort of how you would define what a rad dad is, like sort of promoting that individualism in your kids?
Yeah, I think so. Helping to find who your children are, and seeing the best parts of themselves and helping them to grow into that, despite the fact that of course they're going to have some, bumps along the way, but it's all fun.
Right. Well, what are those qualities that a rad dad would have to help promote that individualism in your kids?
Like, what are some things that we do to promote it?
Yeah.
You mean?
Like what is it about you that kind of helps you do that for your kids?
Well, I think my fiance and I are both very independent people. When in our childhoods we kind of had to figure it out for ourselves. We were just placed in those positions. And with our kids and our parenting, we really want to be supportive of their, how do they want to spend their day? How do they want to spend their time? And so we give a very rewards, based, positive, focused system that they very much understand. To where if they want to have a glow stick dance party with, popcorn afterwards, then they got to earn like 20 stars, and so for the week prior they got to do good stuff to earn their stars, and if they do bad stuff, it's okay, they just don't earn a star for that particular thing.
So do you keep like a chart up somewhere? How do you keep track of it?
Yeah. So we keep a running star chart with literally, sticker stars for them. And, if they fold their laundry, if they make their waffles for breakfast, if they, don't go for seconds, or if they go for seconds but they eat all of their seconds, for all of these things they get a little star. And if they do well over the course of the week, then they get to earn really cool, rad stuff.
I love that. So there's kind of teaching them that like responsibility piece, but like this is one reason I was really interested to talk to you, because I know, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about how you sort of got your law firm started, what that transition looked like, and now you're kind of building, or I guess maybe rebuilding, I don't know how you classify it, but kind of your music career. There's really this entrepreneurial focus and spirit, and that I think connects to what we're talking to here. So I'm kind of curious, like, how do you bring those worlds together, and do you see, I guess, in your approach to parenting, some similarities in the way you're kind of approaching your own career in life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think often the mentality with children and raising kids is, not expecting them to know anything about anything really, and just kind of, a lot of parents, and myself included, I think, at first we were of the mind that, we got to make it better for them than it was for us, right? And we got to like do all of these, provide all of these things, make it really streamlined and easy, so that they don't really have any, any to-do items, any tasks. But I read somewhere, and I think this is what kind of set me on this path. But I read that a lot of these children in these, developing countries were actually far more responsible, far more independent, and had that grit and that resilience quality, because when they were very young, they were encouraged to help out, around the house. So they would help out with sweeping and stuff, and doing dishes and cooking and all of these things. And that was embedded in those cultures, but not really my culture, and the expectations that I had. So I started, she was only, I think, 1.5 or 2 years old, but, I bought her this tiny little purple broom, because purple's her favorite color. And I said,
Yeah.
hey, here, you're going to sweep up that little patch of the floor, and I'll do, 99% of it. But this patch is up to you. You're going to sweep it into the dustbin, and I'll help you to bring it to the trash. And of course, when she was 2, like, she was terrible at it, right? Like,
Right.
she threw dust everywhere. It made things worse. It wasn't really like a net help,
Yeah.
but she was learning, and she loved the ability to participate and help. Like, children love to help. And I think that if we teach them, no, that's not your job. Like, if we teach them to not help, it's kind of, then they kind of believe you, and they're like, oh, well, I'm not supposed to help. Like, people just do stuff for me, So, and that's really, to your question, that dovetails into an entrepreneurial life, where you envision what you want, you set it down to, action items that you need to do to get from point A to point B. And you can really, we give them a lot of goals, or we ask them what their goals are. They love to go to the water park, or they love this, glow stick dance parties, or they love to watch a movie with the family and have popcorn. So whatever it is, they aspire to those goals, and then they do what they got to do to meet them.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm totally identifying with what you're talking about here. Like, I think it's really hard, because a lot of us are also, like, we live in a bit of a world that's very efficiency focused and like productivity focused. And you said something that I think about a lot. Like, we try and get our kids to help around the house and stuff too, but sometimes they actually make the problem worse. It's like, okay, I asked you to clean up your room, and like, you've actually just made this huge mess. And you know what? Let your tendencies be like, let me just do it. Let me just clean this up.
That's the temptation. Yeah. Because you would do it better and faster,
Yeah. But you're doing them such a disservice, right?
Mm-hmm.
By doing that. And yeah. And you're right that, like, when they do help you, like, it's so funny. We also have a 3-year-old, and she's so stubborn right now. Like, to get her to do anything, it's always like, no, no, no. Right. But if you can kind of find that way to, I guess, tap into her inner desire to help, she just loves it. Like, we went outside and she was helping me for like an hour the other day, like rake up leaves. And
wow.
yeah.
That's
and
great.
just because it was like, well, here's your little rake, just like you said, here's your little rake. And you just, she wasn't really helping, but she felt like she was helping and accomplishing something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a neat feeling to see them, I guess, have that like sense of pride, even if it's just little things like that.
Yeah, and it's I think it's important to them to know that they're contributing. You know, like if imagine if you got a new job, you know, and you were watching all these people around you do tasks that you at least understand, you know, and on an elementary level, but they're like, no, you sit there, like you don't do anything. You know, it's like a weird, it's almost a punishment to not be allowed to help. Like people naturally want to help, I think, and so we allow that, you know, and support that, you know, that idea.
Right. I love that. I like the idea of having kind of the system. We've contemplated that too. We've never kind of enacted it, but maybe we should give it a try. Kind of that, you know, people have the chores chart, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, and they can really visualize their contribution there too. So that's really neat.
They can see it, and they're really proud of it. You know, oh, I've earned, you know, 25 stars this week. Like, wow, high five. You know, and it's not, you know, there is some, you know, times that they'll go to timeout if they're like, you know, being really loud at the dinner table or whatever it is. But you know, most of this system is reward based. So if they don't do something, it's totally fine with us. You know, and we just, you know, set those boundaries, and we're like, okay, you know, if you only earn 5 or 10 stars, you can't earn this thing that you were wanting. So we're going to go do this, and you might not get to, you know, but that's cool. That's your choice. You know, like it's completely up to you. And, you know, then sometimes they're like, oh man, I really wish I did that extra work, you know, and then that's motivating. The next time they're like the best, you know, workers, because they really want sure that they get to have fun and watch the movie or whatever it is. So
right. Yeah,
fun.
that's so interesting.
There's no punishment. There's no like blame. You know, it doesn't matter if they choose not to do something that would be nice if they did. It's okay. You know, we still love them completely, and we're like, oh, you know, come here, give you a hug, and you know, it's all love, man.
Right. Right. Yeah, I love that. Where were you sort of in your career and stuff when you became a dad?
I was deep in the law. You know, I had a law firm. She was born in 2016, so it was like year 4 or so in the law firm.
So you'd already started your firm at that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went to like a big law firm out of law school, and then I spent some time building my own, just because, you know, I felt that there was a lot of resources that I had, or skill sets or talents or something that they, you know, really weren't taking advantage of. They just wanted me as a producer bee, like in the cubicle, you know, working 50, 60-hour weeks. And I just couldn't sustain that, you know, without actually talking to people. So then I set up my own firm, and now I get to talk to people all day.
Right. And you specialize in sort of business law. Is that primarily what you do?
Yeah, business and entertainment law.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my wife's a lawyer, so I'm kind of interested in that.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
On the other
Wow.
podcast that you were on, that we were talking about before, you had mentioned you do some employment work. My wife's an employment lawyer, so yeah, I was just sort of interested in your experience with that. And I mean, I know I see her; she's grinding all the time. It's a tough field, right? I mean,
yeah, it is. Yeah.
You know, it of course depends where you work and stuff. She works at kind of like a mid-sized firm, and like I think she's pretty well supported, but the workload just never stops. Like, you know, it's crazy. And I've heard you talk about on your podcast even about you know, your mindset of like, what kind of time do I have in my day to be productive with? And so it really sort of got me thinking about that and how that applies in our family, because you can kind of get into this mindset of like, we don't have time to go, you know, maybe it's do things for ourselves, but it might even be we don't have time to go do things for the family or for the kids because we're just so busy. So I'm curious, you're busy. Like, how do you balance all of the things that you're doing? Like, not only do you have your own business and your own practice, but you're doing music. You know, you're doing your own podcast. You know, how do you do it?
Good question. I delegate. You know, I delegate a lot. I'd say when I first, in the first couple of years of being a dad, I was really against ever having any, babysitter or nanny help, like anything like that. I was just like, no, I'm going to be, always with her, like, no question. But if I was being honest with myself, if it was like, 3 or 4 days of just me and her, I would get tired, because I'm trying to do legal work. I'm trying to, write music somehow miraculously. And young toddlers, they need your attention like every few seconds, really, at that point.
Yes.
Maybe they'll sleep for like 40 minutes, but you got to be lucky, right? And it was very difficult for me. And at some point I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna bite the bullet and just hire someone, to help me out for a few hours here and there. And what that did was this miraculous shift as a dad, because the time we did spend together immediately was like very high quality, because I had the capacity mentally, emotionally, to really connect with her and be present for her and listen very well, and connect with her on whatever level she wanted to connect on. And also, she had a lot of fun playing with, the nanny or the babysitter, and that was great for her too. So I delegate a lot. So I also did a similar move with a podcast, editor, right? So I hired this guy who's very good. He's another artist and musician, and he just, he puts it through Pro Tools and he chops it up, and I don't have to do any of that, but that was another like 4 or 5 hours of engineering, editing work that I had to do for the podcast every week. So I just try to, what are the things that must be done? Must they be done by me? And if so, I'll do them. But if not, then, can I hire someone else to do it? And just kind of balance with that. Another thing I found was that when I started playing music, it was kind of like when you go back to the gym, so you're really tired, right? And you're like, oh, I can't, there's no way I could go to the gym, I'm so tired. But then when you start going, when you get some reps in, you notice that your body delivers like more energy, like enough to go to the gym and enough to do even more stuff, which is kind of counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But that's what happened with music. I was spending a lot of time, watching the boob tube or whatever. But
Right.
when I started doing music, I noticed that I was like inspired now. And I'm like, oh man, I want to write a song, I want to write a guitar part. I want to think about these lyrics and, put them in this chord structure instead. And it was just exciting. So, more energy came where I didn't think it was available.
Right. Those things like fill up your tank a little bit, right?
Yeah, it adds to it, which is, you would think it would take more out of you, but it actually replenishes you.
Right. So is it sort of like finding those things that you're really passionate about and focusing there? Is that sort of what it is?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, if you really sit down with yourself and you're like, all right, man, if I died tomorrow, what would I regret not doing? And there's bound to be some things that come up in your mind, and just love on those parts of you and say, okay, how can I do this? And yeah, you might fail, but hey, I'd rather have tried and not done, a perfect job of it than, not even trying and dying having not tried. That would suck.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I kind of we kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent. I didn't finish my original thought. I had asked sort of where you were in your career when you had kids. So
Sorry.
your firm, no, that's okay. That's good. But your firm was sort of going for a few years. You become a dad. Were you afraid at all? Did you have any fears about that? Like, you kind of had a lot going on at the time. Any fears about becoming a dad?
Not really. I always felt like I was gonna really be a good dad, because I really care a lot about kids, and the day that that she was born, and it was this kind of short, funny story, but the nurse, was like, "You need to give the baby to me," and I was like, "No, she's not, because she was crying, and then I held her, and then she stopped crying, and I was like, we're gonna take a minute, and she's like, "Well, I need to weigh her and prod her and stuff," and I was like, "We'll get there, but you can wait like 5 minutes. It's okay, like I'm paying for it anyway." So, but in that moment, I just knew, like I'm gonna do whatever it takes, for this girl to help her to be who she is, and I felt just overwhelmed with love and warmth, and yeah, I don't ever feel that I don't have enough like love in me or energy or something to to really work hard at being a good dad.
Yeah. So you weren't worried about the dadding stuff, like some people are worried, like, oh, I'm not sure I'm going to know how to swaddle the baby or like change the diapers, the very, procedural type things that are involved with parenthood.
Oh yeah,
And then
there's a lot.
yeah. And then there's the bigger things. Yeah. The car seat, that's always a tough one. Yeah. And that just evolves over time too, because you move from the bucket seat to the convertible seat, and then you're talking booster seats and stuff. So yeah, you're
right.
always learning, right? So yeah, there's those things, but then there's kind of those bigger questions too, like, how's this going to impact my life? And, am I going to be able to manage time? And were you worried about any of that stuff as a business owner?
I think people think a lot that if you own your own business, that would be far more work. But that's not, if you're doing it well, it's usually less work. It's more risk, right? But well, in some ways it's less risk too. Like if you have a job, you basically have one boss, maybe a couple,
Yeah.
so your income, your family's, resources depends on impressing that one or two people. I have like 5,000 business clients. So if one of them fires me and is like super pissed off at me for whatever reason, I'm fine. Like it'll be like sad to lose them, but it's not like my whole family's income takes a big hit, like there's a tiny scratch, I guess, but it doesn't really matter, and if you make the right choices as a business owner, you can make it so that you work less and you make more. You just have to be smart about it and delegate things correctly, and really watch the dashboard, watch the numbers, and make sure it's making what it needs to make. Clients are happy, and move on that way. But yeah, I guess it didn't really freak me out. I wasn't at a spot where I couldn't do everything I needed to do as a dad and as a business owner. I will say though that like family vacations, I don't really get vacation like in a traditional sense. If I leave the company, I'm not, steering the wheel, there's a high tendency for like it to tank.
Okay.
So, that's kind of a con to it all. So definitely a drawback. Like my mom was like, "Hey, it's the summer, let's take 2 weeks and go river rafting with everybody." And I'm like, "That sounds amazing, but there's no way I could do it."
Yeah. So how do you, I guess if you can't, you're not able to sort of get away for those periods, how do you find that break, I guess, from work? Is it just sort of shorter? Maybe it's weekends, or how do you guys do that?
Yeah, so I can successfully bring my daily work hours down to 5 hours a day, for example, like 4 or 5 days a week, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
I just can't take like a big long vacation, where I'm not touching the work. So it's kind of different in that sense. But that allows for me to be here with my kids every day, and be a good husband and, all of these things too. So
Yeah. So there's more kind of day-to-day contact. I think that totally
yeah.
makes sense to me. Like I think about for, me and my wife often, because we have kids in daycare and school and stuff, it's like get up in the morning, get ready, rush out of the house, get the kids to daycare. Sometimes Nora's at daycare by 8 o'clock. Sometimes we don't pick her up till 5:30. It's a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
time
sure.
where you're
Yeah.
away, and you get those like little, an hour or two once you've
Hmm.
had dinner and everything, that you really have to cram in your time. So yeah, that's really interesting. So you kind of have a bit more maybe flexibility during that daytime.
Yeah. Being the business owner allows me to say, I'm going to elect to do 3 hours between, 8 and 11 tonight,
Yeah.
so that I can, go to my kids' play or whatever, during the day. And not to say that it's fun to work from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. on like a Friday, but it is an option that I
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily get if I didn't own the business.
Right. How has being a dad changed you?
Oh
Or
gosh.
has it changed you?
Well, of course it's changed me. Yeah. I think I really felt like when I first met my daughter, I really felt like there's this whole other world of stuff that I just didn't know about. It wasn't in my experience. I'd heard stories, kind of made sense on a logical way, but it didn't make sense in my heart and my emotions. One thing I'll say that changed me is like commercials and Disney movies. Dude, like I used to cry like once every 5 or 10 years. I did
Yeah.
not cry a lot. I was in touch with my emotions somewhat as an artist, but not very much. But now, man, oh my God, like you send me a story about a father and his daughter and like, stress points like Ariel and her dad, like, oh my
Yeah.
God. I just like so it means 10 times more, or 100 times it. It's just a completely different story. And I can't help but just, break up and
Yeah. There's
cry.
like, I totally agree with you. I'm the same way. Like, or
Really?
you see, you're scrolling through Instagram or Twitter, you see a story about like, maybe a sick kid or so. It's like, you can't
Yeah.
even fathom what that must feel like. I really think having kids, and I'm not saying that people who don't have kids don't have empathy, but I think it does, like on a wider sense, it sort of like
Yeah.
builds
No,
your empathy,
definitely.
like as a
Yeah.
community, almost like what people
Yeah.
must be going through, what they could be going through. And
Hmm.
so I think that is a real thing for sure. And so I think it kind of manifests in some of those things where you're watching a Disney movie and you see a relationship between parent and child, and you're just kind of almost thinking about it in terms of how you would feel.
Yeah. Yeah. And how your child would feel,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I don't think that's in your awareness, before. And I also think, there was a time, when I was in the dating world, being a single dad, and there was such a distinct and large difference between, women that I would date that didn't have kids and women that I would date that did. It was night and day. Like they just, the, the women that didn't have children just truly didn't understand, you know, they didn't understand the struggle, the empathy, just, I don't know. There's something, it's like we go on another level of humanity when we have children. And I don't mean this to toot our own horns too much, but
Mm-hmm.
the game changes, everything changes. Like it's when you are responsible for a human being, living or dying, like minute to minute. I mean, when they're two,
Yes.
like, if she climbs up on that dang chair and like tries to grab the light bulb and fall onto the glass table, like that could be it,
Yeah.
So it's like, I understand that we're having this argument in our relationship, honey, but I gotta go save her life. So, give me a second, and so yeah, I that was unfortunate, but the truth, and obviously that's changed me a lot. Like now I think it gave me more resilience and more grit. Like running a team with employees, it's less of a big deal than it used to be, but it used to really like be troublesome for me.
Right.
Employment is easier after you have kids.
Right. Yeah. You have a bit of a different perspective on it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious kind of what the connection is like. So you have, sounds like, do some kind of business coaching type work and have had some coaching experience yourself.
Oh yeah.
That kind of ties into your podcast. It's kind of interesting because I just recently did a coaching, sort of a coaching and mentorship course through our university here as kind of part of my work work development plan. And everything that we learned, I was kind of like reflecting on it, not in terms of work, but in terms of my personal life and in terms of my kids. So I'm curious, what your thoughts are on that. Like, those skills you learn as maybe a coach or, someone who is going to empower someone in the workplace, how you see that play into your family life as well. Do you see that same sort of connection there?
I do. I think there's a lot that I've learned about, the victim mentality or an entrepreneurial optimistic mentality. Excuse me. And I can see both of those potentials arising in our kids. And, I feel that it's my job to spot that, and then sort of walk them through, the extreme results of those two mentalities.
Mm-hmm.
So if they go far down the victim road, it will get them some things in the immediate future, because some people will be driven to rescue them out of their victim mode. But do they want to be always dependent on people to save and rescue them? Or do they want the option to be able to take care of themselves? Like when they turn 18, to me, I haven't done my job right unless they can, fully function and survive on their own and know how to live and be and, walk in their own life. And then they can come back and, I'll give them some advice or thoughts or whatever. But for the most part, that it's on them at that point. And so, we have a strict no whining policy. So unless you got hurt or something, if you're stomping your feet and throwing stuff and yelling about it, and I don't want that, it's an immediate timeout and just a reset, so, you get, and it's every time. So if you say, I don't want that, I don't want that, I don't want that 3 times, then it's like 6 minutes per. So sometimes we have like an 18-minute reset,
Yeah.
But when our kids come out of that, they are so zen and they're just like, they're fine. It's really surprising, but we're setting the boundaries around, not being in that victim mindset. If you're actually hurt, or if someone
Mm-hmm.
was mean to you at school, or, you had an argument or a fight, we will absolutely validate and be here for you. And, that's not whining to me. That's very legitimate, valid,
Yeah.
emotional
Emotional
issues
distress. Yeah.
right. But it's the same. Those are lessons that I've learned as an entrepreneur. Like if my company isn't making money, I can whine and bitch and cry about it all day long, and I can get plenty of people who will like say, oh, I'm so sorry, Jonathan, like you work so hard, you don't deserve that, but that's not going to help solve the problem. Sadly, it's not going to do shit. The only way for me to pick my law firm back up out of that, ground is to look for the opportunities, find the silver lining, like hustle, market, sell, like I need to be in a totally different mindset. I need to be optimistic, not pessimistic. And that works, and in that way, I think entrepreneurship is like one of the best mental health, emotional development things that you can do, because there's just no sympathy.
Right. Yeah. It's all up
The
to
victim
you
mentality,
to figure it out. And that was something I really took away from that, that coaching training too was like, you know, that answer's inside you. Like when you have a problem, that answer's inside you. So sometimes a good coach is going to help you just unlock that answer. What's your motivation? What do you see as the ways that you can work through that problem? And I just kept thinking, geez, this is a really great way for me to talk to my kids.
Yeah.
You know, you got a
Right.
problem. How do you think you could solve it? What are the options? You know, have you thought about what the benefits of one solution over the other? And it's been so helpful. Like, I mean, it takes a lot of practice to get good at that, but that's something I've been trying with my kids. And it's actually been so amazing because it's so easy. Well, we were talking about this before. It's so easy just to want to dictate and tell them this is the right way. Dad's been through it before. You know, I'm experienced. I know what you need to do.
Right. But you're teaching them, you don't know, I do. You should shut up and just do what I tell you, know, which is not like, that might work when they're children dependent on you. But the second that they leave your door, you know, it's not going to work because there's not other parents or people that will take care of them. And if they purport to take care of them, that's a dangerous like enemy. You know, I don't want them trying to find people to take care of them. I want them, you know, creating their own kids that they will take care of. Like that's all, you know. We had an interesting interaction like a week ago where Elijah, my stepson, was running in the kitchen, which is, you know, a no-no, and he bonked his head really hard onto like the counter, and you know, we were like, we took 5 minutes or something to kind of, you know, get him through it, and then he was like, you know, I don't ever want that to happen again, and I was like, okay, we can do that. So what you're saying is that you want a hard rule that anytime anyone takes one step that's too fast, we will immediately put them in the timeout, no matter who it is. And he's like, well, no, I don't want that. And I was like, you don't? And he's like, no, I don't want that at all. And I was like, oh, well, what do you want the rule to be so that you'll never run into anything again? And he's like, well, I don't want to run into anything ever again. And I was like, okay, you know, do you want me to make a change? And it just came out that, you know, he didn't actually want any new rules, because that law would have like all of these other, you know, it might solve the running into things issue, but it's going to, you know,
cause all kinds of other things.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And so, but we walked it through with him, and he was like, and he had this, you could just see like his gears were going, you know, and he was like, wow, yeah, I don't want that at all.
Yeah.
Like, don't make any change. Just let me run around.
Well, kids, I think that's one of the biggest challenges with kids. Like, so you can talk to them very pragmatically and work through those things with them, but you have to like get past that initial emotional, you know, mushroom cloud that sort of happens when the outburst. And so, you know, you were talking about timeouts earlier and how beneficial that can be to just help them, you know, cool down. And I do think that is a unique challenge with kids, that they just get so emotional and they just don't have those skills to kind of like contain that. So you do need to let it run its course a little, right, before you start trying to address the problems. So that technique is helpful too, right, to have them kind of walk through it.
Yeah, I think asking them questions is like such a great way, because if they're in questions, it activates the portion of their mind that's like, you know, problem solving, you know, and opportunity driven. Like, you can't be deep in a victim mindset if you're answering questions, because your brain just can't do that at the same time.
Right.
You know, so this morning this is being filmed, you know, around Mother's Day, and so my daughter wanted to do some special stuff for Marla, and you know, so I was like, you know, working on the dishes and you know, cleaning the countertops and stuff, and my daughter Juliet says, you know, hey, I want to play War, you know, the card game. And I was like, okay, what am I doing right now? And like, because I had the dogs and all this stuff. And she's like, you're doing dishes. And I was like, yes. Why am I doing the dishes? And she's like, well, because you want to be nice to Marla. And I was like, yes, exactly. How long do you think it will take me to do the dishes? And she's like, 10 minutes. I was like, okay. Is there anything you could do to help me so that I could do it faster? And she's like, I can help you with the dishes. And I'm like, oh, baby, that would be great. And then she's like, okay, I'll help you with the dishes so that we can play war later, but it's like, we just have to level set with her, but instead of doing that, my first reaction was to say, be quiet.
Yeah.
Like, let me focus on this thing. But to walk her through it, she very much wanted to take care of Marla and like do these things nice for her so she wouldn't wake up to a pile of dishes, in the morning. But we just had to walk her through it.
Right. Yeah. So it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, that you're kind of finding their own motivation and they can solve their own problems. Because very easily you could have said, just, go to the other room, I'll be done in 10 minutes. Or you could have said,
yeah,
you need to get in here and help me with these dishes. And
right.
all she would have heard was, well, dad just is making me do this chore, without thinking about what's my motivation for that, or what benefit do I get out of that.
Right. And she's reaching out to me to connect with me over this card game, which I think is badass,
Yeah, that's great.
But, I can't do it in that moment, but I do want to get there, and she wants to get there too. So let's work together. I also look at kids as like a slow progression between really, really wasted drunk when they're infants to like sober when they're like, 20 years old,
Yeah.
But it's this slow burn, like their recovery from their their hangover is like, that's how long it takes. And honestly, sometimes, especially when they were younger, I just imagine myself being really drunk, because my emotions are out there and I can't control them. And I don't know what I want, but I'm telling everybody everything about my life story,
You can't walk straight.
They can't walk straight. No way, but I'll pitch a fit or whatever. But if I look at them in that way, I think it makes a lot of sense. And it's like, if you had a friend that was like way too drunk for his own good, you'd take good care of him. It might be annoying, but
Right.
you'd make sure he's safe. And this is the same way with
right. And there's not too much rationalizing with someone like that either, right? You can't like
yes,
get them to think logically, and so you have to take a different approach, right?
Yeah, their attention span, it's limited. Like there's a threshold.
You
can push on it, and the older they get, the higher the threshold. But yeah, it takes a while.
Yeah. Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, I've never heard that comparison before, but it's pretty true. I mean, certainly I'm thinking about like, my 1-year-old just learning to walk and walking like they're drunk a little bit, but that's really funny. So what is or was, can you talk about a little bit your relationship with your dad?
Sure. Yeah. It wasn't the best. My biological father left around the time I was born. I think they tried to get back together when I was like 3 or 4 months old, and then he was gone.
Okay.
I didn't meet him until I was 16.
Wow.
And we tried to reconnect, but it didn't really take. He, in my opinion, I'm sure he would have a different story, but my perspective was that he really had trouble connecting on any real level, and he kind of wanted to like keep it very superficial and, in my view, kind of narcissistic even. And I just didn't have time for that in my life, so I decided to not pursue that relationship. My stepdad I met when I was 4, and that was kind of a difficult relationship. We're very good now, and I will say that he absolutely taught me a really good work ethic, and most of the entrepreneurial sort of mindset and work ethic and professionalism that I have now, I think it's because of him. I watched them build a business from 1989, and now they have like 100 employees, and they're doing quite well, very well. But I got to watch that journey, uh, intimately, and it's tough, to run a business. And he was a doctor too, so
Okay.
so he had like multiple jobs, and extremely busy. And I will say too that it was a benefit to me because we had a blended family.
Yep.
We had me from obviously the prior marriage of my mom's, and then he had an older son that was like a stepson of his, that was like 10 years older than me, and I really looked up to him. And then we had the two siblings that they had together. So it was a really, everybody had like a very different position in the family household, which made for a very dynamic and interesting sort of web of society.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned a lot from that, and I feel like I'm much more sympathetic to like stepchildren's needs. So my connection with Marla's son Elijah is very pure in my view, and we're close, and he's, like I said earlier, we share the same birthday, which is really neat. But he's around the same age I was when I met my stepdad, so I feel like I can understand where he's coming from and his needs.
Right. So you're kind of like actively reflecting on your own experience as a child and bringing that into how you approach your parenting.
Yeah. It's kind of a lot, like just thinking about it, I feel a lot from it, because I have such a big history, and he's in it too, so he's got his dad, and that whole bit, and we're trying to help. And
family can be so complicated, right?
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like people always say, like, you don't get to choose your family, and so you do learn some interesting skills about kind of adapting and working through, I guess, differences that you might have in terms of how you see things, and that can be valuable. It's interesting your what you were saying about kind of watching your stepdad grow his business and kind of getting to see that from the inside,
Mm-hmm.
and building that entrepreneurial spirit in you. From your experience as a child, kind of seeing that growing, and maybe your stepdad's role in that, has that changed how you approach your own business? Or I'm interested in your reflections on
100%.
that.
Yeah. I'm nodding my head a lot, so I guess that those of you that are listening can't see all of my head nodding. You don't see the video. But yeah, absolutely. I'd say, and we talk about this all the time, but he taught me when I was very young. He said, a smart man will learn from his own mistakes, and a wise man will learn from other people's mistakes. And so I'm trying my damnedest to learn from his mistakes. And he's humble about it. He's like, yeah, I made mistakes up and down. One of the, what I'd call mistakes that he learned very well was to delegate. It's tempting to, I always talk about like the printers. I remember growing up, it was a business that needed a lot of things to be printed. So if a printer goes out, in some ways the whole team would kind of shut down,
Right.
And printers used to be far worse, I think, than they are anymore. Or, digital files were way too big to fit on like a 4 gigabyte total hard drive, like it took up a lot of space.
Right.
So he would stop everything and everyone from working, and he would like troubleshoot this printer. And like, he's a doctor, he's an incredibly intelligent man. The value of his time is like so much more than a printer technician. you know, but, you know, he just didn't think to find a printer technician, or he didn't want to pay, you know, whatever that
Right.
would cost, because then he would have to pay money for something that he could do eventually, you know, but sometimes it would take like, you know, 6-7 hours to troubleshoot this ridiculous printer. And that was just such a problem. He couldn't meet his deadlines. He couldn't do the things that he had to do. His business was suffering. And, you know, everyone was on payroll, like 10 people would be on payroll watching him try to fix the printer. Like
Waiting.
it
Yeah.
was, yeah. And we all wanted to help. We felt terrible for him. But, you know, he was like, I got it. You know, so he learned from that, you know, 20 years ago. But now I've learned that too, you know, and I'm able to, you know, from his lessons, hire people that are far better at me at doing things like that. And I don't expect myself to do it. And that keeps me fresh and, you know, more energized. And so I have more time with my kid, you know?
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. We often think about, like, when it comes to costs, like we think about our direct costs, like right in that moment, you know,
Right.
I can pay, like, yeah, I could pay somebody to do that, but I could fix it myself. And maybe you get some personal satisfaction out of that. Some people do, right? I think
Sure.
about this all the time about stuff around my house. I'm not very handy.
Yeah.
So
I'm not either. Yeah.
I hate doing that stuff around my house, actually.
Yeah.
There are some things I'm sure I could figure out, but I hate every second of
Right.
it. You know, and so for me, there's value, even just emotionally, or, you know, whatever it is. I could spend the time with my kids or whatever. Some people really like it. They like to fix their car or whatever. That's their hobby. But same thing for work, right? Like if your time could be spent in a more valuable way, then sure, there's that initial cost that you're paying. But you're getting it back somewhere else. And so it's often hard to make that connection.
Yeah, if you can go to work and make, you know, $50 in an hour, you know, or it takes, you know, $20 an hour to pay somebody to, you know, do this task that you don't really want to do and you're not very good at, or you could do it yourself, but it would take you 5 hours, and you'd be super stressed out and pissed off,
Yeah.
and like your whole family's going to feel it, and everyone's going to be like, oh my God, you know, like he's so stressed out right now. I wish he wouldn't have even tried, because now everybody's miserable, you know, because
Yes.
Brett switched out the HomePod service, you know, for this thing, or tried to do an oil change, or Lord knows what, you know. But yeah, it's just simple math at some point, you know, like just go make $50, spend 1 extra hour working for, you know, your job or whatever, pay someone else who's an expert at it and does this all day, you know, who can do it efficiently. You don't have to spend the 10,000 hours to master that thing, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. I mean, it might even just
totally
be,
agree.
maybe you're not even getting that $50 because you're not able to maybe do an extra hour of work in that time, but you might even just be building goodwill for your business. You know, maybe it's reaching out to clients or whatever, which
Yep.
maybe doesn't have direct monetary benefit at that moment, but the printer technician can't do that.
Yeah. And they can't, you know, spend that extra time putting your kids to bed and hugging them to sleep.
Right.
You know, that would be weird. You wouldn't want them to anyway. Right. So yeah, you should do that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Stick to the toner, buddy. Well, that's great.
That is the incorrect tone for the relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, trying to make the dad joke.
Yeah, that's good. We worked one in there. I want to talk a little bit about what you have going on right now in terms of music and your podcast and stuff as well. So yeah, tell me where things are at. You just had your latest single, Runaway, just come out. And you kind of got a bit of a plan, a vision for this year in terms of your music. So yeah, let's tell the listeners about that.
Well, I just, you know, I run it like a business. You know, I'm going to dedicate this much time and effort and, you know, resources to it. I want to have, you know, some what I'd call key performance indicators, you know, KPIs, like how many streams am I getting, you know, how many article placements am I getting, listeners for the podcast and the music, and, you know, all of that. But it's just something that that I have to do. I feel like I don't even have a choice. You know, I got music in my heart, and I gotta sing it. And I think I think art at its best, not to say that mine is the best, but it's the best that I can do. You know, validates and speaks to people for an emotion or a thought, or, you know, a worldview that they wouldn't otherwise know that there's other people that share that.
Right.
And so there's kind of a communion that you get. And I think it goes past, you know, your political beliefs and your family history and all of those, your opinions about things. And it kind of just skips to the trace. It goes right to the heart of it. And it's magical in that way. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, we're releasing a song a month, and then we're going to wrap it all, you know, into an album. We tracked the next 6 songs at LA Sanctuary Studios with Peter Barker, who's this awesome guy who's working with Zakk Wylde and Guns N' Roses to release some of their older material again.
Wow.
You know, his Herbie Hancock and Springsteen, like he was the chief engineer at Sony in most of the 90s. So he's got, you know, more connections than I could ever imagine. But for some reason, he's taken a liking to me and my music. So I'm very honored and blessed with that. But yeah, that's the plan. And the podcast, you know, an episode a week. I think I'm probably going to take, you know, Christmas off and Thanksgiving. But other than that, we're going to rock it out, you know, and have a good time.
And so for people who are listening, who maybe haven't checked out your podcast yet, maybe tell me a little bit about, you know, what's the podcast aiming to do? I was just listening this morning to the Should I Stay or Should I Go episode.
Oh, cool.
I love the connection, because, you know, I'll let you kind of explain it, but it's, you know, kind of that business mindset, but related to rock and roll. So I like that kind of melding of a couple worlds there.
Yeah. I think people are pretty sophisticated now, you know, like I think if I pitched this to anybody 10 years ago, they'd have been like, no, you know, keep it either music or entrepreneurship or like, you know, personal growth or whatever. You can't do all three, but I think people are pretty sophisticated. So the goal behind it is to, you know, take some good music, kind of analyze, you know, the lyrics or the song, you know, structure or melodies, and then apply that to something that we can take advantage of today, right now, you know. So a mindset lesson, an entrepreneurship lesson. As a business and entertainment lawyer, I have had the opportunity to speak with people very intimately about, you know, their businesses, and to the point where, you know, so intimately, like, they may not even have these conversations with their spouse because their spouse just might not understand. You know, it's hard to tell your spouse, hey babe, don't freak out, but it looks like we're going to lose $30,000 this month. You know,
Right.
Like, what did you just say? You know, like, stop everything, you know, like I'm going to flip and lose my shit, you know?
Right.
But they can talk to a business lawyer about that. And to me, that's common, you know. It's not a big deal. There are also months when they might make 60, 70,000 extra, you know, if they do something very well. So I can help them dig out of it, and I can take that experience to this podcast and help to share some of those life lessons that have been taught to me that I've learned. So yeah, so it's called Success, Decisions, and Rock and Roll, which is of course kind of a dad joke play on sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Right.
But yeah, it's every week we talk about a good piece of music. We relate it to, you know, a cool life lesson, and you know, just kind of work through it. But you know, it's getting some traction. People are enjoying it for sure.
So that's awesome. Yeah, I really enjoy it, actually. You know, we've got kind of the music connection, so I love that part of it. But you know, focusing on that kind of personal growth and like you said, sort of, you know, how does it apply to work and home life and all of that stuff? I think it's really, really interesting. So I really like it a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. And so we'll put links and stuff up in the episode descriptions and everything, so people can find where where that is. Where can people find you online if they want to find out more about your music, your podcasts, whatever else is going on?
So there's two websites and they both point to each other. The main one is jonathansparksmusic.com. So JONATHAN sparksmusic.com. And my law firm website is sparkslawpractice.com.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we'll throw up some links to that as well. Any advice for dads out there who might be listening, or maybe soon to be dads?
Gosh, so much. I'd say, I think the best advice I ever got about parenting was, not like a technical thing. It wasn't like, when they do this, you shall do that, because every kid is different and every home is a little different and every dad is different. But the best advice I ever got was just love them. Just love them, like no matter what they do, no matter how many of your buttons they push and ticked off they get or whatever, just find that spot in your heart where you love them. And, even when they're being bad, and most especially when they're being bad, because if they know that they're loved, even when they make mistakes, like they'll be a superpower when they grow up.
That's awesome. I love that. That's a great way to end, I think. I really appreciate your time today. This has been really fun.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been an honor and a joy.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. And thanks for getting the message out there, Brett. I mean, this is great. This is like so helpful for the world. I'm not being, it's not hyperbole, really. Like, people need this. So thank you.
Thank you so much for saying that.